All right, joining me now are former federal prosecutor and current chair of the Criminal Justice Department at the University of New Haven, Robert Sanders, and also Dominic Romano, founding partner of his law firm that specializes in media law. All right, gentlemen, so you heard that argument there, and at the time I thought it was a fairly interesting one. Again, we have to remember, this is a political theater. This is being put out to not only constituents, but also to a very willing audience of Republican senators who are already predisposed not to vote to convict. And they just need something to hang their hat on. They don't like the media to begin with, Dominic. So I thought it was a good use of their time to present this type of evidence and say, hey, they're relying on all these media. And you're a trial attorney, so you know that in essence, that kind of reporting, or that kind of relying on that type of reporting, that type of evidence, doesn't really amount to much in most cases.
Michael, you're right. I'm a media lawyer, and sometimes the media gets it wrong, right? The media is not infallible, that's for sure. If they were, there'd be no retractions, there'd be no lawsuits for defamation, libel, et cetera. But at the end of the day, most of the time, they get it right. And so for him to throw out, oh, well, you're just basing this all, it's not all on media. A lot of this is based on the president's own words, the pattern that we were all talking about earlier. Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. You know, some, yes, but the president had an opportunity, as we said before, to step in. He didn't do that. He gave a very fiery speech. He said our country has been under siege for a long time. Think about what the rally was called, the Save America rally, as if there's some like big peril that their democracy is going to be stolen because of these voting machines, these completely unsubstantiated reports that they're fighting very hard. And losing. I mean, it was very difficult, as I understand it, for the president to find attorneys in the first place to keep fighting this fight. But here we are, and then there's an attempt today by his lawyers just to throw out everything the media says or everything that's reported in the media. I don't think that's going to go very far.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, Robert, you know, you have evidence. And you have this evidence that was refuted, and Mike Lee came out and refuted a piece of evidence. Doesn't that then bring into question all the other evidence? Even if you say media gets it right most of the time, well, which is most of the time? Which one of the ones that they chose was most of them? I think they didn't make a big deal of it, and I think they try to skirt over and say, hey, oh, then we'll just drop that piece of evidence. But I think it brings into question all their evidence. I thought it was more serious than I think it was portrayed to be at the hearing. What do you think?
Well, so throughout this entire proceeding, there's been media evidence used. The defense used it in their videos. They didn't take those videos. They took those down from the media, and they put together a rather cartoonish video when they talked about fight, as opposed to what the House managers did the day before and put together a Hallmark movie, which you needed a Kleenex box for. So when you think about the media, you can do whatever you want with the media, and you can take it apart, and it will always sometimes be wrong.
You know what's interesting, and I want to bring in a piece of tape here from James Clyburn. Excuse me. And he is a House Majority Whip. He's a Democrat from South Carolina. And he talked about how a number of the jurors, I think it was Ted Cruz and a couple of others, went in and actually talked to the defense team to help them prepare their case. Let's listen to what he had to say, then we'll talk about it on the other side.
No, I don't think so. It may be allowed, but inappropriate. Just because a thing can be done doesn't mean it ought to be done. And I do believe that those three senators have held themselves out for a lot of mockery going forward. Now, Lindsey just got reelected, and maybe he'll weather the storm. But I'll tell you this, the public sees this as being very unseemly. And I think they made a horrible mistake doing it.
All right, now, Dominic, we know this is not a normal proceeding. The rules of evidence, various rules do not apply. But it does feel a bit unseemly. I want to get your opinion on that type of tactic by not only the defense team, but also the senators involved.
You know, you mentioned before there's a political theater here, but still, if the Senate is acting or should be acting as a type of jury here, you would think that the proper thing to do would be to stand back and listen and impartially observe. Robert, what's your take on that?
Well, I heard someone say that this whole proceeding is a combination of Judge Judy, a regular trial, and the House on a regular, everyday basis when they're at each other's throats. So I don't disagree with that description, but there's a duty, particularly if you're the person who is the trier of the facts afterwards, to maintain at least the fiction of a level of impartiality. And when you are sitting down planning how you're going to be questioning people who you're going to be making a decision about the evidence and helping them develop the evidence, the fiction is gone. And I just have a problem with that, visceral problem with the duty, the oath. Where is it? How does it work? Did you actually accept it? And are you living it? Or is it just garbage?
Yeah, excellent points. All right, gentlemen, stand by. We have to take another break. And up next, we'll look at an emotional moment that came at the end of today's Senate session right after this quick break. Stay with us. Hello and welcome back to Court TV. You are watching our special live coverage of the historic impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump. The Senate is scheduled to get back into session tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. We will be right here tomorrow covering the action right here on Court TV. Now, senators are expected to vote tomorrow on witnesses and then ultimately vote on whether to convict or acquit President Trump. Let's talk about it now with my guests, gentlemen. Back with me are former federal prosecutor and current chair of the Criminal Justice Department at the University of New Haven, Robert Sanders, also Dominic Romano, founding partner of the law firm focusing on media law. Now, gentlemen, what are we expecting tomorrow? I mean, we're going to hear closing arguments. I'm sure they're going to go after each other. I was actually very impressed by the question and answer session today. Some of the questions were politically based. They wanted to give their side an opportunity to restate some answers to questions. But I thought some of the questions were thoughtful and mirrored some of the questions I had. So I thought that went well. What are we expecting tomorrow from Dominic? What are you expecting in terms of not only what we're going to hear from the defense, but what ultimately is going to happen with a vote?
I think, the defense is probably going to address that selective array of the use of the word fight that we saw today. I agree with you. I thought the questions today were quite thoughtful. They were probing, and I think tomorrow it should be an interesting day indeed.
Now, Robert, we heard a lot from the House managers. There were some arguments made today that I think they need to address in their closing arguments. Specifically, I thought that the defense team did a good job of pointing out that they had taken some of the president's words out of context. So they expanded where he said, let's go fight. And then they expanded it and said, right after that, he's saying, well, if we don't get them there, we'll get them at the primary. We'll do this, we'll do that. And there was a little bit more there that they had been ignoring. They also used that same tactic with his speech regarding the incidents in Charlottesville. I think they need to address that. What do you say?
Well, the defense today tried to hone everything down to the speech on 1/6. The House managers want to expand that. They want to build a narrative of Donald Trump as a politically violent individual, and his political violent rhetoric culminated in what happened on the 6th. So they don't want to, from the manager's side, be held to the circumstances of the 6th of January alone. They want to be able to show Donald Trump as a violent individual whose violent rhetoric culminated in an assault on the Capitol. And just one point for correction, there's a really good guy named Dave Myers, who's the chair of the Criminal Justice Department. I'm the chair of the National Security Department.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry about that, Robert, really.
No problem.
So at the end of the day, let me get from you, do you think there's an acquittal? Do you think enough was done here to convince I think they need about 17 Republican senators to come on over to that side to convict him. Do you think they did enough?
It's political. And if the politics are not left at the door, no, because the Republican Senate has an agenda, and they can't get through their agenda with their constituents at home. They don't believe they can do that without Donald Trump on their side. And if they convict Donald Trump, they've lost Donald Trump from their side.
All right, Dominic, quickly, yes or no, convict, or are they going to acquit?
It would take, I agree, it would take a lot of political courage to convict. I don't think we're going to see that kind of courage.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I want to say thanks to both of you. My guests, Robert Sanders and Dominic Romano. Always great to have you on. I hope you'll come back and join us again.
Glad to be here.
Pleasure.
All right. Fantastic.